Compliance with the B3 guidelines is documented within the B3 Guidelines Tracking tool. This platform enables project team members to submit documentation for each guideline at each phase, from pre-design through 10 years of building operation. Access to project information is available to project team members, as defined in the tool by the project's guideline leader, as well as the B3 Guidelines administrators. When you log into the tracking tool, you'll see a list of all B3 projects you're a part of. For example, this team member is a member of one project. In addition to the project's name and address, this view shows the project's current phase within the tracking tool and which guideline version the project is using. It also calls out any immediate action items that are preventing the project from meeting its documentation requirements. Several links are also provided. The first link accesses the project dashboard, where detailed project information is tracked. Other options include adding or assigning team members or accessing the current phase report. These last two options can also be accessed from the project dashboard. The project dashboard is the main resource for your project and is where all guideline documentation is stored. The row of buttons at the top open the project editor, which includes information about team members, roles, assigned action items, and other project details. The rows of the dashboard include all the applicable guidelines for the project. These are divided into the 5 categories of performance management, site and water, energy and atmosphere, indoor environmental quality, and materials and waste. Each category can be expanded or collapsed using the +- symbol. Each row represents an individual guideline, with a link to read the guideline that accesses the complete guideline language, information about the intent of the guideline, submittal requirements, and additional resources, including templates and worksheets. Each guideline can be expanded to show its component parts, including the team member who is responsible for documentation and whether that part is required or optional. Optional parts of guidelines can be listed as pursued or not pursued based on design team inputs. You can use the drop-down on the left to expand the grid to show all of your action items, all action items, or all guidelines. The columns of the grid show each phase: pre-design, design, final design, and closeout. Clicking on the phase summary report accesses a report showing all information submitted for that phase. As seen in the legend, a red outline shows when documentation is required for each guideline. The current phase is highlighted in yellow, and boxes with a yellow triangle and exclamation point are items that have been assigned to you to complete. To access and complete your assigned guideline, click on that action item icon. This opens a pop-up where you can provide your documentation. Boxes that are colored yellow are required fields during the current project phase. Boxes that are blue are calculated fields. These boxes are not directly editable, but rather are calculated from other user inputs. These fields may use data that's entered into other guidelines, potentially by other team members. To learn about how each field calculates its values, you can hover over the question mark located next to the input box. Gray boxes are fields that are not applicable during the current phase, but are required in a different one. Again, to learn more about when it is required, you can hover over the associated question mark. Once the necessary inputs have been provided, it's time to check for compliance by clicking on the green Check for Compliance button on the bottom of the input menu. If the inputs provided are compliant, you can choose whether or not to sign off on the guideline using the checkbox at the bottom of the window. If you know you need to double check an input, you can save and close without signing off on your submission. This will continue to appear as an action item on the project dashboard, but your work will be saved. If you are ready to finalize your submission, you can sign off on it. This will cause it to show as complete on the project dashboard for that phase. If an unexpected design change affects the inputs, you'll still be able to edit them after acknowledging the warning. You can then re-sign off with the current date. Completed guidelines can continue to be edited up until all guidelines are complete for that phase and it is locked for editing. Sometimes the inputs you have provided may be flagged as not compliant. The reason why a guideline is not compliant will be shown near the top of the window in a red box. In this case, you and the project team should work together to fix the problem. For example, this non-compliant will be solved when more of the budget is set aside for SB 2030 compliance and operation. To fix the problem later, click the green Save and Close button. Note that this will not sign off on the guideline. It simply saves your work so you can go back and fix it later. If the program requires a variance to solve or must be labeled as not compliant, click the red link labeled Apply for a Variance/Non-Compliant. More information about the role of variances and non-compliant designations are available on the B3 website. A couple other notes about the tracking tool. It is possible to open any guideline at any phase by clicking on the relevant box, though you will get a notice for guidelines that are not required at that phase, guidelines in a future phase, and guidelines that are not assigned to you. However, you can complete and sign off on guidelines in future phases. For example, if the B3 documentation is lagging behind the actual project schedule. You can also complete and/or sign off on guidelines that are not assigned to you after acknowledging the warning at the top. Your name will be used for the signature. If responsibility for the guideline should be permanently assigned to you, this can be done through the project editor, the row of buttons at the top of the project dashboard.